Imagine this. You're woken up in the middle of the night by the sound of your door being smashed in. Federal agents throw a flashbang grenade into your home and hold you at gunpoint, only to realize, oops, they're at the wrong house. It's a terrifying thought, right? Well, it's exactly what happened to one family. So today, we're going to break down their long, complicated legal battle to hold the government accountable, a fight that went all the way to the Supreme Court.
Talk about an opening line. This is literally the first sentence from the Supreme Court's opinion on the case. It's so stark, so direct, and it kicks off a story that isn't just about a single, terrible mistake, but about the very rules for seeking justice when the government gets it wrong.
So, how in the world did this happen? It all started with an FBI plan to raid what they thought was a gang hideout.
It was just this cascade of errors that led to a total disaster. The FBI's real target was on a street called Landau Lane, but one of the agents used his personal GPS, which took the team to a completely different street, Denville Trace. In the dark, they apparently missed the different street sign, the different house number, everything. The result? They stormed the home of the innocent Martin family, terrifying them before realizing their huge mistake.
So, after this incredibly traumatic event, the Martin family did what you'd expect. They tried to sue. But, as they were about to find out, suing the U.S. government is one of the most difficult legal challenges you could ever face.
Okay, so normally, there's this old legal idea called sovereign immunity, which basically means you can't sue the king, or in this case, the government, without its permission. Well, the Federal Tort Claims Act, or FTCA, is the law that gives that permission for torts, which is just a fancy legal word for wrongful acts that cause harm. It's supposed to be the key that unlocks the courthouse door, but it comes with a whole lot of exceptions.
Anyone trying to sue the government under the FTCA immediately runs into two massive legal shields. First, there's the intentional tort exception, which protects the government from lawsuits for things like assault. And then there's the discretionary function exception, which gives them immunity for actions that involved an employee's judgment or choice. Since a raid involves both an assault and a lot of judgment calls, the Martins' case looked pretty much impossible.
But, and this is where the law gets really interesting, Congress knew that these hurdles could block justice in cases of law enforcement misconduct. So they created a very specific workaround.
It's called the law enforcement proviso. Think of it as an exception to the exception. It basically says, look, if a federal law enforcement officer commits assault or battery, the government can be sued. It was designed for situations exactly like the one the Martins found themselves in.
So, with this proviso in hand, the Martins should have been good to go, right? Well, not exactly. You see, their case was filed in a part of the country that's governed by the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals, and that court, well, it had its own very unique way of handling these cases.
This created a really bizarre legal maze for the Martins. In most of the country, the proviso gets you past the first hurdle, the assault claim, but you still have to deal with that second hurdle about the agent's discretion. But the 11th Circuit said the proviso wiped out both hurdles. Sounds great for the Martins, right? Well, the court then invented a new defense just for the government, saying it couldn't be sued if the agents were furthering federal policy, a standard that is almost impossible for a regular citizen to overcome.
And all of this confusion is exactly why the case landed at the Supreme Court. The justices had to step in and answer two really basic questions about how these lawsuits are supposed to work, not just in the 11th Circuit, but everywhere. First up, the court had to decide, is this law enforcement proviso a master key that unlocks all the government's defenses at once, or does it only work on the one specific lock it was designed for?
And the court's answer was a unanimous no. They looked at the way the law was written and basically said, look, this proviso is located inside the intentional tort exception for a reason. Its job is to cancel out that one exception, and that's it. It doesn't touch the others. So now every court in the country has to follow this same two-step process.
Okay, so what about that special defense the 11th Circuit basically invented? Can the government really block a lawsuit just by saying its agents were furthering federal policy?
And again, a unanimous and resounding absolutely not. The court said the 11th Circuit got this completely wrong. The whole point of the FTCA is that when the government gets sued under this act, it's supposed to be treated just like a private person would be. And a private citizen who broke into the wrong house could never claim they were furthering federal policy, so the government can't either. Just like that, the Supreme Court erased this huge legal roadblock that only existed in one part of the country.
So the Supreme Court clarified the rules of the game for everyone. But what does that actually mean for the Martin family in their case?
It's the big question, right? After all this, do the Martins finally get justice?
And the answer is not yet. See, the Supreme Court didn't declare them the winners. It vacated and remanded the case. That basically means it hit the reset button. It wiped the slate clean, erased the lower court's wrong decision, and sent the case back down to be heard all over again, but this time using the correct rules.
So now, the Martins' whole fight for justice comes down to this single, crucial question. The lower court has to decide if an agent's actions, like using a personal GPS and not double-checking the street sign, are the kind of high-level policy discretion that the law protects, or if it's just plain old professional negligence. The answer will get to the very heart of this constant tension between giving federal officers the freedom to do their jobs and making sure there's real accountability when their actions harm innocent citizens. And as always, we'll end with our standard disclaimer. This is for entertainment and educational purposes only. This is not legal advice.